It's not just radio, it's Rockland World Radio. RocklandWorldRadio.com.
Welcome to Voice of Reason, a weekly report and discussion on the important issues of concern on the local, national, and global stage. And now, the host and moderator of Voice of Reason, Dan Giordano.
Hello, and welcome to the Voice of Reason, a 1-hour panel discussion focusing on global issues. Today, I'm joined by our panel of regulars, Michelle Solomon, Paul Tappenden, Ali Cayenne, and Sherwood Martinelli, all authors, activists, poets, and philosophers. So our first topic today is commodification of the White House. I know back in the day, for people who don't remember the Clinton administration, people got very upset over selling nights in the Lincoln bedroom for campaign funding. The latest president-elect has kind of put that to shame in a Kardashian culture. I'll throw it out. We'll start with you, Paul. I know you have something to say. What do you think about what you're seeing here in the run-up to the inauguration?
Well, quite frankly, there's not much really to see at the moment. I mean, okay, so some of the stuff he's doing is going to be expensive. But it's been going that way for the past 20, 25 years. I've seen the same thing happening over and over again. Some new person gets into the White House and all of a sudden people are complaining because, Michelle had 25 personal assistants, something like that. It's the cost of doing business, as far as I'm concerned. We're never going to stop these people. They get into the White House, they go apeshit crazy with the situation, and we sit back and look at it and we tut, but there's nothing going to change really, I don't think. So.
Sherwood, you're about to explode.
Yeah, let's hear somebody explode.
No, let's be honest here. He's not even in the White House, and he's turned it into a fire sale for self-benefit and improvement. You're sitting here. It's like, for instance, he had that meeting with the people from India, okay, that he's doing business with, okay? And the purpose of that photograph, from my perspective, is real clear and simple. Those people he's doing business with were being investigated by the nation of India, okay, for all kinds of wrongdoing and embezzling and so forth and so on. Okay, and Trump suddenly inviting them to have a photo op with the soon-to-be elected president sent a clear signal to India: leave my business partners alone. I wake up this morning, somehow miraculously, permits and problems Trump was having in getting his new Trump hotel in Istanbul, Turkey, have now all been approved. Same thing with the Philippines. You're sitting here, you've got, Ivanka Trump and son Trump Jr. sitting there having meetings, okay, with all the people that he's meeting with to discuss business right after they supposedly stopped by for just a congratulatory handshake. And then a day, 2 days, 3 days later, his business things are being approved. Let's look at the Russia situation, okay? For there supposedly not to be a Russian connection, how is it and why is it then that during the presidential run-up to the election that Trump created 8 new companies in Moscow?
Well, how are the people going to stop that? He seems to not want to set up a Chinese wall between him and his businesses. What can be done?
Impeachment. Day one. Okay. No, he's clearly has so many conflicts of interest, but not only that, I think he's stepping way beyond what could be called a conflict of interest. Okay? He's basically commingling the White House with his business and using the White House as a new corporate headquarters for Trump Enterprises. Okay? And even more dangerous is not only is he doing that, but he's opening the door for us to have a fascist march into fascism and a nation that will be Hitlertorian in full scope.
Yeah. So, Michelle, what do you think?
Well, what I want to know is that not a law that you have to put your money into a blind trust or some other arrangement?
No, it's not.
Well, I think the first thing to do is that needs to be a law.
The problem is there's a law for everybody but the president and the vice president. They're exempt from that law. Basically, it's sort of, well, we would like you to do this, and it's kind of been protocol for all these years that you do this. But Trump is right in the fact that there's no law ordering him to do that. And only if he begins breaking laws and or other laws, okay, can anything be done about it.
But
so
there are other protections. I mean,
like what?
The Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, and also the Electoral College. I mean, if you read about why it was created, it looks like a laundry list of electing Trump and why the electors should refuse to actually put him in power.
But we all know that's not going to happen.
So there are precedents that we can pursue and hold people accountable for. Trump is saying it's the law, but it's not.
The only protection we have right now is when the Electoral College meets. If they follow their conscience, okay, they would not put Trump in the White House. But if you go back to the Republican convention, they were in that same situation. They did have the right to vote their conscience, but they still made Donald Trump their candidate, okay? Mm-hmm. And so we're sitting here. You might as well hang it up. The Electoral College, whether we like it or not, is going to cave and sell us out. Trump's going to be in the White House. Once he's in the White House, okay, there's nothing we can do. Okay, like for instance, one of the things I thought about, so I looked it up. There's no recall for presidents.
Well, one of the things, if I may just interject, what I said about it ought to be a law. I think that's one of the things that we should do. We should contact our elected representatives. There ought to be petitions made. There ought to be pressure put on for that to change immediately. Immediately. That's not impossible. I mean, that's how we got to get started. We've got to do that. It shouldn't be optional. Exactly. It should be required. And he's already shown that it's getting into trouble. It's causing conflict of interest. Exactly. He's got these things. So that's what I think we should do immediately. Is people should, organize around it and get clear about it. Get petitions up. Call your representatives.
Yeah, that is the way to do it. Paul?
Conflict of interest. That's the biggest issue as far as I'm concerned. The rest of the stuff, the renting out of bedrooms in the White House and the rest of it is nonsense. But yeah, I mean, we ought to be able to do something about this, of course. I don't know if we can. The fact of the matter is, I don't think there's been a president, certainly in my lifetime, there hasn't been a president who hasn't had a conflict of interest of one sort or another. That's true. I mean, that's just the way it goes, Trump is just much more upfront about it than others have been in the past, I mean, that's really the bottom line right there. But maybe he's making it easier for us now because...
That's what I think, yeah.
If he's getting everything out into the open and saying, look, this is what I'm doing, that's going to get people worked up and things may happen as a result of it. I think this whole Trump presidency is all about that. I think that the people of America have been way too complacent, way too long. Now all of a sudden somebody's standing there rubbing their faces in all of the stuff that's been going on saying, I'm doing this and there's nothing you can do about it. And then we're going to turn around and say, well, there is something we can do about it, and damn it, we're going to do it. So I think this is what...
That's what I think, too.
Yeah.
But what happens if we wake up, much like they did in Germany, and realize it's too late? Okay, that the train's done left the station, that millions of undocumented immigrants are being locked up and deported by the train carloads, okay?
But
you
that's
wake
been
up
going on under
and you wake up
Obama,
and you
too.
realize that LGBT rights have been rolled way back. You realize that because all of a sudden something happens to some of our justices on the Supreme Court that are over 80, and now a majority Republican conservative Supreme Court reverses Roe versus Wade. You can go on and on and on down the list. of all the things he could effectively destroy or set back 60 years, okay, it's
And
scary.
that'll bring us to our next topic, which is how do you feel about Nazis? We'll be right back on Voice of Reason.
Hey, Michael.
Yeah?
Do you remember when my character Ella says she gave up texting and driving? I wish more people would do the same.
Tell me about it. TWD, texting while driving, not cool. Do you know how many near misses I've had lately because people are trying to blast off a quick text while they're behind the wheel?
Yeah, and I love texting just as much as anybody, but it can wait until I am parked because no text is worth being distracted and putting lives at risk.
A recent study just found that those who text while driving are 23 times more likely to be involved in an accident.
So, join us and our fellow castmates on Melrose Place along with AT&T in saying texting and driving, it can wait.
To learn more about the risks of texting and driving, sign the BFF pledge and get safe driving tips at facebook.com/ATT. I'm signing it.
Our second topic today on the Voice of Reason is the rise of hate speech and hate crimes in the aftermath of the Trump election. Specifically, we're looking at things like the alt-right, and they seem to be having a moment right now. Michelle, what do you see? What have you been seeing in this topic?
What I see is that there's two voices, and one is that people are absolutely standing up and saying this is unacceptable, and there's another side saying, oh, calm down, cool your jets, give the guy a chance. And I think that's very dangerous. I think that you don't wait a minute to stand up against hate speech. It's obviously, increased in numbers. There's reports everywhere. It's here. It's here. It's not to be ignored or swept under the rug. You got to stand up and speak out against it immediately. That's what I think.
What is hate speech? Seriously, what is hate speech?
To me,
I hear the word all the time, but I don't know what hate speech is.
Bullying, it's kind of
Swastikas
obvious.
on the doors of synagogues, okay.
But that's been going on for years, though.
But you're asking for examples. Those are examples, graffiti saying Muslims go home, or et cetera, so forth and so on. Those are all symbols of hate speech, okay? So you're saying, well, what is it, okay?
Yeah.
It's when you literally, without any real reason, have a unexplainable hatred of a different group from yourselves, and you have no qualms about expressing that dislike and hate of that other group, either verbally or with symbolic symbols in a public manner.
Yeah, I understand that, but what I see quite a lot is that somebody will criticize another person who is not of the same ilk as they are, and then it's called hate speech.
But
And
they're criticized for their sex or their gender or their religious affiliation. That is hate speech.
when,
They're not
when
criticized
they're
because
making,
they don't agree with a particular,
Yeah.
idea.
But I mean,
the law is
it's
very
bullying.
specific.
It's offensive, and it's disrespectful
Okay.
and threatening.
Well,
See, the thing is that what bothers me is that fascism can go in two directions. If we start stepping on hate speech, then we have to start deciding what hate speech is. And then we start encompassing free speech in general. If I say something to offend you, then that's hate speech, and now is my freedom to say that now going to be squashed because we now don't permit hate speech in America?
Oh, well, there are semantical differences.
Well, that's what I'm
think
saying.
What
It's
you're
ve-
saying too is like what happened with the whole political correctness movement, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a very fine line. It's what they did in Germany. I mean,
but
back,
the problem is when hate speech becomes hate
Acceptable.
crimes, okay?
That's different.
No, and it's like, for
Well,
instance,
it is
this-
different.
but
We're talking about the speech right now.
No, but my point is I think there's a difference between our First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, and someone or someone's or a group of someone suddenly beginning to, under the guise of free speech, start threatening and intimidating people different than them. And it was scary. I went to the Nazi Party website this morning.
Nice.
Okay,
That
no.
must have been a real fun trip on the web.
It's scary, the things that they say, and even scarier is when you read their opening page is how you can see how they have presented themselves in a way to reel people in and onto their team. Because under Trump, just like under Hitler, he's made it real clear. If you are not with him and if you're not in his camp, you are the enemy.
Well, they rebrand themselves over and over. Michelle, you had something that you wanted to say.
I was going to say that it's not a fine line. I think it's a very distinct line between free speech and hate speech. You're threatening people. You are deriding people for what they are rather than their opinions on a subject. So I don't think it's a fine line, Paul. I think it's a really, really clear line.
No, I don't agree with you.
Well, can I ask you a question, Paul? If I sit there and I say, I accept your right to be gay and I don't really understand it, that's free speech. But if I all of a sudden look at you and say, I hate you, you homo, or you queer, or you're faggot. No, those are examples of where you go from.
And I'm going to kick your ass, and
right,
I'm going to burn a cross
exactly,
on your lawn,
thank
and
you.
I'm going to pull
so
your hijab.
Yeah.
Okay, so you say that to a
That's
gay person.
Not free speech.
Okay,
No,
that's hate
I
speech.
agree.
What if you said it to a Republican? I'm serious. You can insult a Republican until the cows come home.
Of
It's not
course
hate
you can.
speech.
Of course
you know
you
what I'm
can.
saying?
Yeah,
so
but that's
where's the
allowed.
distinction?
You're not if you attack or insult the Republican Party, you're not attacking and or insulting an individual for who they are as a human being on this planet.
And it also comes under what is assault and battery kind of laws as well.
Yeah.
That's where it also
It's just,
there's
I tell you,
religious and discriminatory
But even if
aspects.
there's not physical assault, there's shaming. That's a big part of hate speech when you're
Intimidation.
shaming someone. So again, I just want to reiterate: it's not a fine line.
See,
it's a very clear line.
I hear the champions of protecting or the champions of hate speech is the left, basically. I mean, they're the ones that put themselves up as saying we don't want hate speech in this country. I hear more hate speech coming from the left than I do from the Republicans I know. Absolutely, without question.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, as I say, they'll talk about Republicans like they're the very devil themselves.
Yeah.
And the Republicans are just other Americans.
The specifics of the speech is what you're making a broad.
Yeah.
I can't really respond
Well,
to
I mean,
that because you're not giving specifics.
Well, there's no
Can't be
specific
violent,
situation right now.
It
But
can't be threatening. It can't be discriminatory.
yeah.
Well, I remember this meme that was going around, I guess, right after the election, and it was a map of the country, and it kind of basically showed the whole Midwest, and it was like, what the fuck is Stan? It was basically saying if you were from the Midwest and, you voted for Trump and you were part of that ideology, that somehow you were a fucking idiot. And
Right.
that was... And I understand exactly what Paul's saying because I identify it. There's a certain blindness in liberal ideology where they think because they have this intellectualism, they can't see their own judgment, their own hate.
Yeah.
But I think
So
the but I think the
Your
problem you run
privilege is
into,
showing.
like
Exactly.
That's what we say.
with I fuck a Stan, is the fact of the matter is that the Electoral College has made their votes more valuable than the votes of the majority, which is scary. But it's like we talk about hate speech. Okay, we're supposed to be the United States of America. All for one and one for all. Yet you go to the Nazi Party website, their first paragraph. Today, according to the latest U.S. Census, only 23% of the American population under the age of 18 is white. White in bold letters. Already, 4 U.S. states are majority non-white, capital letters. And 10% of all counties in America are majority non-white. Worldwide, white women of childbearing age comprise only 3% of the Earth's population. Do these facts disturb you? They should. That speech that's deliberately meant to divide our nation into camps, white and non-white, as if anybody that's not white is the problem. That, to me, is hate speech.
Well, I don't know if I agree with you. That's not exactly hate speech.
speech,
That is
yeah.
dividing people, but that's not hate speech.
Bad
okay?
philosophy.
So, and more to the point to reiterate is it's the normalizing of hate speech. And I want to give grab the pussy, as a great example. Where is my? Oh wait, never mind. That's that whole attempt to normalize it, to explain it away as just locker room talk. Okay. there lies the danger. Okay, there's the normalization of, of what is hate speech, what is terrifying, what is, promotion of rape culture. I mean, that's the stuff we need to be vigilant about. That's the stuff we need to speak up against now.
Donald Trump called for a death sentence for the Central Park Five, and then when they were found innocent, to this day, he's still not issued an apology.
Different subject, but
no. But my point is this is what I'm saying is you can take
very different.
But my point is almost everybody in his cabinet has raw examples of being racist in the history of who they are as a person, and yet what are we doing? We're normalizing it because the press keeps telling us, give him a chance, give him his first 100 days, let's see what he's going to do. No, I don't want to give him that chance. The fact that almost every nomination for Trump's cabinet so far has examples of outright blatant racism in their background, and that we can't be normalizing that.
But I think that there's a lot of people in the administrations who are what I would call the Trumanite government, the unelected people that are put there that won't let a lot of that stuff go through.
Wishful thinking.
Yeah,
no, I don't think
I think that white supremacy is on the rise. Nationalist white supremacy is behind all of those guys. He's just nominated all the old boys. And if you notice, on all of his nominations, he has one woman nominated, by the way.
For education.
One woman. And she's not,
and Nikki Haley for the UN.
Two women,
ambassador.
that's right, Nikki Haley. Okay.
So there's a number of...
but out of many, many men, it's predominantly like 99% men.
But if you look at, for instance, Nazi Germany,
there's a lot of
and you look at what Adolf Hitler did, where he basically took the disenfranchised groups of Germany, gave them a target to hate, and then married himself to the corporate Germany that we're going to renew the economy, okay? And then you look at what we're doing right now, and that's what Hitler did, is he married himself to the 1%. Well, Donald Trump doesn't even have to marry himself to the 1%. He is the 1%, okay? And so now he's got all these rabid, nationalist-type fascists behind him. He basically has effectively created a second army in the United States, and then just like Hitler did, he has the military believing that the elected officials prior to him, decimated the military, and he is going to rebuild it. Okay, so now he's got the military behind him. He's already named 4 generals to the cabinet. Okay, we're looking literally at a country that's very fast, rapidly, headlong, running right straight down the exact same identical path that Germany ran down in the 1930s that gave us World War II.
But people said that when Reagan was elected. And the Thatcher and Reagan revolution, I think, is what actually really mirrors this time. I mean, the Brexit and what just went on with Trump being elected, I think that's more historically what we're looking at. And I do think that institutional change, we talk about trying to change things a lot on this show. I think institutional change takes a long time, no matter who's in power. And I've pointed this out to a lot of people I talk to off camera, I think that Trump has more problems with the Republicans in Congress on his flank than he does with the protesters in the street right now. And as far as I was talking to Allie off camera about this, I still am willing to bet, I believe, and you can say I'm wishful thinking, that the American people don't believe this. This is a small group of people, very fundamental in their thinking, and scared, but I don't think that those people win the day in an American system, and I think we're trying to be part of that by putting out phone numbers and trying to call people to what they can do to help work within the system. But I guess you guys have serious quarrel with that.
I don't necessarily disagree that in the long run that the alt-right will not win and carry the day. What concerns me is the cost we each and every one of us individually and collectively as a country are going to pay in cost-wise to quell what is basically a rebellion being visited upon our nation and its governing style by the alt-right.
I have to make an admission right now. What are the alt-right? I have no idea.
White supremacists.
It's a polite, politically correct term for fascist,
Nazis.
racist, Nazi,
David Duke.
David Dukes of the world, KKK. In other words, you take that whole group, and because we don't want to talk about fascists and racists and Ku Klux Klansmen, we give them a politically correct, nice-sounding little name. Oh, the alt-right.
I don't think it's politically correct. I think it's politically incorrect, and I think what we really
Maybe
need
if
to
it
do
was alt
is
wrong.
call it what it is.
Yeah.
It is white supremacy, and I don't think we should be calling it alt-right.
Yeah, because I've heard a lot of the alternative news websites put under that same banner, put into the all-white category, the alt-right category. And, like Natural News, for instance. I've been following Natural News and a lot of these websites for years, and I don't see any evidence of this white hatred. All I see is that they criticize what's happening and they look for solutions. But all of a sudden, anybody that doesn't agree with the basically doesn't agree with the media, it seems to be put into that category nowadays of alt-right.
Well,
I mean, I'm in that category because I follow these websites.
Are you saying, Paul, that you don't see any evidence of hatred?
Oh, I
coming from the
do.
white?
Absolutely, yeah.
Did I hear you just say that?
I think he's saying like alternative news sources. Like there's been a huge attack on the quote fake news by the real news, and I think he's saying that he keeps finding the alt-right somehow under the same banner as the alternative media. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what he's
exactly.
saying.
I mean,
So
a lot of the people who I admire, who have been fighting on the battle lines for years, and now all of a sudden turned into the enemy because they are making the media look stupid.
Yeah, well, I don't
they make
disagree with
themselves
that,
look
but I think
stupid.
that one of the things I've been seriously looking at is there seems to be a lack of old school reporting and journalism. There's a dearth of analysis, and that's what gets a lot of media sites in trouble. And that is actually another discussion that we're going to have on a Voice of Reason episode coming up, which is about kind of fake news and how we determine what is real and what is fake in the news and how facts are gathered. That's going to be a great report. We're going to actually take a break and leave it right here for this segment, and we'll be right back with the next topic on Voice of Reason.
Have you discovered Rockland County? It's the Hudson River Valley's best-kept secret, where you'll find beautiful river towns. Whether it's the charm of Piermont, the art and soul of Nyack, the history of Stony Point, or the allure of Havistraw, you'll find them all in Rockland County. Start discovering the Rockland River Towns. Visit rocklandrivertowns.org to plan your trip today.
No, but my point is it's getting more and more in the open.
But I'm saying it's been in the open this entire.
But it should be in the open.
Yeah.
Everything should be in the open so that we know where our enemies are, so that we know how to deal with them.
We know where our enemies
I
are.
agree.
He's going to be in the White House in a month and a half.
Yeah, wow.
But I feel like I'm with Paul. I feel like now that people, I think that the wolf in sheep's clothes is more dangerous than the wolf itself. And I feel like people are really activated right now. I think what's going to happen with all these women coming together to march, that's powerful. Whatever you want to say about Trump, he's a lightning rod. He's bringing people together to resist or to, follow the trend. And I think right now, even Mayor de Blasio's message that came out of the city of San Francisco, I feel like there's a real movement to protect the most vulnerable right now, and people are ignited. They're not going back to sleep. They're not falsely celebrating. They're being vigilant right now, and it may be very painful and uncomfortable because it's forcing us to really take a look in the mirror and deal with the ways in which we've become complacent and are resting on these false comforts. I think it's uncomfortable, but I think it's a really good thing that's happening. And this isn't 1940, whatever in Nazi Germany. This is a very unique time in history where we have the internet, we have each other, we're able to connect in ways that we haven't in the past and really share information. And I am just choosing to be, optimistic. And
Have you looked at how easily Trump could declare martial law?
Well, that's
Yeah,
been that
anybody
way
could do
since
that. Happening.
Nixon. Any president.
You say he wouldn't do that. I'm not so sure.
So
I didn't say he wouldn't.
So we're going to actually go to the next topic, which is going to be the Dakota Access Pipeline and Spectra Pipeline locally. I'm going to give it over to Michelle real quick, who can give us an update
I didn't
on
need that, right?
these items, and we'll talk about what she's got.
Okay, so the update that I have about the Dakota pipeline is that the Army Corps of Engineers just announced that they are going to close public access to the Dakota pipeline, to the Standing Rock Sioux camp. They're going to close public access. They're not saying they're going to actually forcibly remove anyone. That's what they're saying. I don't know if I believe that, but whoever who remains is considered unauthorized, and they are subject to various citations. The chairman of the Standing Rock Sioux camp, whose name is Dave Archibald, I think is that Archibald. He came out saying, he's very deeply disappointed in that decision by the Army Corps of Engineers. There's a couple of things that we can do in response to that and to support Standing Rock. Number one is that there's a call to protest all offices of the Army Corps of Engineers, so people to protest outside of them on that day, on December 5th. We'll put up at the end of the show information about that. Also to call the Army Corps of Engineers, your phone calls for this is an urgent request to call and ask them to rescind that order. There are about 1,500 vets arriving, and the guy who is organizing this is interesting is the son of retired General Ramsey Clark.
Wow.
Yeah, who was a very liberal general, and his son, who was in the Army, is a very, is supporting Standing Rock. And he's bringing 1,500 vets. I think this is going to be amazing. And they're arriving any day now before this December 5th. So it's getting the plot thickens.
Now.
What's that?
There's 2,100 vets going now. The numbers are
2,100. And they said there were about 2,000 people at the camp before Thanksgiving holiday. And word has it that number has doubled. So there could be 4,000 to 5,000 people there already now before another 1,500 to 2,000 arrive. So the camps still need our financial support. They still need us to be calling our representatives, asking them to rescind that order of the Department of the Army Corps of Engineers. We need to call all of our elected representatives to tell them to call back the militarized police for sure. And an update, if some of you probably know that a young activist from New York City named Sophia Wilansky was at Standing Rock about 10 days ago, and she got her arm blown off by a concussion grenade.
Sonia.
All the flesh from her elbow to her hand has been blown off. This is a mortal combat. This is a wound of of combat. The authorities there are denying that they even did it. So this is a really terrible situation, and we should send our prayers out to her first and foremost for a full recovery, and just to keep the pressure on and not fall asleep to what's happening.
I have a question for everybody. I feel like this December 5th deadline. I think it's orchestrated. I think now the media is starting to show up there. I'm afraid for, it seems to be another media event being produced with a conflict between protesters and cops, and to be televised worldwide.
The revolution will be televised.
I'm very wary of it. I don't trust the situation, the way it's unfolding or being set up.
Well,
it could become a false flag event in which they'll fake the protesters throwing a Molotov cocktail or something ridiculous like that, just to turn the whole thing negative.
Sending the anarchists.
I think they already are doing that, and I think if you look at some mainstream media reports, you never see a reporter. They are using film footage. They are
Exactly.
just voice overing it. There's no reporter there. They're still using the language that makes
Jordan
the water
Sheridan there
protectors
from
look
Young
like
Turks.
look in a negative light, as if the violence is.
Well,
you
no,
know,
I
that-
will
that-
say CNN this Sunday actually did a fairly good report on the water protectors, and actually it was the first report on mainstream media that I watched that seemed to take more the side of the protesters than the bad guys. And I agree with you on the timing, but probably for different reasons. If you look at the companies involved, they have contracts that they have to fulfill beginning early January, or they start paying
Right.
huge penalties. Okay? And so you sit there and you look at that, and you look at the reasons why the Army Corps of Engineers says they're doing this. Like they say, we want to put a end to these violent confrontations. Well, who's perpetrating these violent confrontations? It's not the water protectors. It's not the protesters. It's the police state that is enacting and
Right.
carrying forth the acts of violence. Then they say, well, we also don't want people like dying from these harsh winter conditions. Okay.
Then stop shooting
so
water cannons.
so it's okay for your oil people to wear warm clothes and work out in those environments all day and then go sleep in their 28-foot campers, but you don't think that protesters can't like have those exact same sets of skills? So I think what we're really looking at here is the Army Corps of Engineers capitulating to big oil money concerns and finding a way for them to be able to meet and fulfill their contractual obligations come January 5th.
Allie?
Well, I always try to find the silver lining in everything. That's me for sure. But for a long time, Morton County Sheriff Department, they have been pretty much running the narrative on it that the mainstream media has been fed. And for a while, they were basically saying that, you know, the water protectors were the ones throwing propane tanks, that, you know, the cops were they were shooting the water to put out the fires that were there, and they were pretty much denying everything. And their whole Facebook page was pretty much repeating this narrative again, showing the water protectors as the ones inciting violence and the Morton Sheriff Department coming in to the rescue. Interestingly enough, a couple days ago, their whole page was cleared.
Yeah.
And for me, that's a signal saying that they can't control the narrative anymore. Right. Too many people know, and too many people are getting involved, that the pressure that we've been applying is working. And for me, it's sending a signal about the people power that we've been putting the pressure on the right places. And I actually feel optimistic about all of the veterans coming out there to really hold space. I think that the light is coming through the darkness right now, and you know, our vigilance is paying off. So yeah, I think we're winning the narrative.
Anyway, November the 15th was a day of action across the country. There were hundreds of protests everywhere in America. Did you read about it in the news? See about it on television?
No.
I mean, this is America today. The media is so controlled, so owned by the corporations that anything that is anti-corporate is not going to find its way onto the news. However, despite that, the news has gotten out across the entire country thanks to the alternative media, and they've not stopped the march in any way whatsoever. All I see is this thing getting bigger and bigger and bigger and getting more and more and more support until it becomes so embarrassing that they're gonna have to do something about it. That's the way I see it right now. The EST Bank, I don't know if you heard about this, that three protesters, they locked their necks onto a railing inside the main headquarters of, because TD Bank is EST Bank. It was the TD Bank. I'm getting them confused here. TD Bank is one of the main contributors to all this. They put, I think, $3.5 million into the whole project, maybe more. So I mean, nobody's getting away with this. It's happening everywhere right now. The country's pissed off, and they're showing it. And they can squirt all their water cannons as much as they like. It's not going to stop us. You know, we're a country that's up in arms about it. So as I say, we're in a good age right now. We're finally beginning to fight back against all of these inequities.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm happy to see it.
and the big point that they hit on Sunday, they did point out the fact that the pipeline was moved from the state capital out to this rural area because it could contaminate the water resources of the state capital.
Of white people.
Of white people,
Yeah.
okay. And the other thing is we're fed this bullshit line by big oil that these pipelines are safe. Well, let me give you an example here. New analysis of federal records reveals that in just the past year and 4 months, there have been 372 oil and gas pipeline leaks, spills, and other incidents, leading to 20 deaths, 117 injuries, and more than $256 million in damages. That statistic gets even more frightening when you take and you look at the data from 2013 up to then, okay? Then you're sitting here and you're looking at oil and gas pipeline incidents have resulted in 532 deaths, more than 2,400 injuries, and more than $7.5 billion in damages. And all of that is happening in rural America, who are being forced to play host to these dangerous projects.
And you know what? It's probably even more than that, because there's been this oil whistleblower that's come out, and he's been showing how Energy Transfer and all these other companies, they've been paying their people to, bury the oil, to cover
Right.
it up, to not turn in the evidence. So
yeah,
it's probably a
Oh,
fraction.
trust me, if this is what we know about, you can multiply that by at least 10.
The other thing I wanted to say about that is that it's relatively new that Sunoco just purchased Energy Transfer Partners in a $20 billion deal. Sunoco has the worst record of all oil companies for oil spills
More
and
than Exxon?
cover-ups.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
So one of the things we could do right now is stop buying Sunoco oil, absolutely for sure, and process in front of these stations.
But even worse was that Warren, from the first company, Energy Transfer, okay, because I'm wondering what kind of a kabuki dance is going on, was made the new CEO of the newly formed conjoined company with Sunoco.
It smacks of nepotism and corporate greed. We're going to actually leave this topic here, and we'll be right back with some wrap-ups.
It's not just radio, it's Rockland World Radio. RocklandWorldRadio.com.
Okay, and we're back on The Voice of Reason. We're going to do our wrap-ups. We're starting with Sherwood talking about the alt-right. Sherwood?
It scares the living bejesus out of me. I mean, seriously, we're sitting here, and maybe I'm being an alarmist, maybe I'm not, but like if you go back to Adolf Hitler, he basically pulled all these hate groups under one umbrella with, Germany first. Okay? Then we have this man in Donald Trump, whose only book he keeps by his bedside table in a little cabinet is all of Hitler's speeches, suddenly comes out this past summer, gathers all of his minions under one umbrella with America First, okay? And basically that America First is a call to arms for every Nazi, every Ku Klux Klan member, every white supremacist, every fascist that lives within the continental United States to say, we're taking our country back for the whites, and if you're not white, okay, you need to go. And so I think we're living in very dangerous times right now, and I will not be a bit surprised, okay, if you start seeing people like us disappearing off the streets and see Donald Trump at some point within the next year declaring martial law within the continental United States of America.
Okay, and now we're going to hear from Paul, who's going to talk
hold on
about...
a second. That phone's going to answer. Hold on. It's got 2 more rings.
How come you skipped Allie?
Okay, here we go.
Allie doesn't have one because we didn't know she was coming.
Okay, Sherwood,
Now we're going to toss it over to Paul, who's going to talk about the commodification of the White House.
Yeah, what does one say about that? The fact is that, as I said before, there has hardly been a president, certainly within my memory, that hasn't found ways to commodify the White House, either by small means or large, mostly by buying favors and selling favors. I don't know whether Trump is going to break all records. It's beginning to look that way before he even gets into power, so it'd be very interesting to follow up on that and see where that leads us. This may bring us to a new era, as we were saying before, where the people of America say this can't go on. This conflict of interest is more than we can handle, and we should somehow put a stop on any president being able to make profit out of the White House. I'm hoping to see that happen in my lifetime. I don't know whether it will, but let's keep our fingers crossed.
Thank you, Paul. So next we're going to toss it over to Michelle Solomon, and she's just going to give us a little bit about pipelines locally and nationally. Michelle?
Local issue with pipelines. We've got the Spectra AIM pipeline right here in Rockland County and Westchester County and all through New England. And I want to encourage everybody who's listening to call your elected representatives to tell them to put pressure on Obama and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, to stop that pipeline. It's a bad idea. It's dangerous. There's been no independent risk analysis. And it's coming a high pressure gas pipeline right next to critical structures of Indian Point. So that's our local. And as far as the Dakota Access Pipeline, we heard about the financial part of that. We got an update about that. But what I really want to say is that, about indigenous rights, that is their land. There is no question. Nobody's even questioning that it's their land from a treaty. So, the time has come. And to say that fair is fair, to pay the rent, to pay our share, that is their land. The time has come, a fact's a fact. It belongs to them, time to give it back. How can we dance when our earth is turning? And how do we sleep when our beds are burning? I'm going to slam the table. I'm going to
Mic phone drop. Thank you, Michelle. And I want to thank you guys for listening. Thanks to the panel. Allie, thanks for joining us today. And we will be back next week with another episode of Voice of Reason.